I'm here at Innovation Day with Richard Hammond, who is my colleague here at Cambridge Consultants. He's the head of synthetic biology. Hi, Richard.
Hello, Richard.
Hi. So, first of all, I know you like to define the world that you're in using this phrase, bioinnovation.
Yes.
So, could you tell me what you mean, first of all, by that?
Yeah, sure. So bioinnovation is a fairly new word, and it's the best definition really comes from the World Economic Forum, and they define it as a combination of the biotechnology, so innovation in the technical side, but also innovation around the governance, the rules of engagement, and also around the economics and the stakeholders. And it's an interesting concept because it brings together three very important aspects of all the things you need to consider if you're truly trying to use biology to solve some of the really difficult problems in the world. If you're truly looking to, say, look for climate change or feeding people or new forms of therapy, you can't just look at the technical aspect. You have to have a broader view across those three areas, and that encapsulates quite nicely under this word bioinnovation, innovation in all those areas.
Got it. And is the industry that we're talking about here, is it cohering nicely around that definition? Is that how it's actually playing out?
It does seem to be, yes. I mean, it was interesting to see the WF using that phraseology in a recent report, and certainly the conversations I've been having over the last 2 or 3 years, there's a definite recognition that there's more to it than the tech. You know, that's an important part of it, and deep into the science and the engineering and so forth, but there is a lot more to it than that. If you're truly to use some of these ideas and attack some of these much more challenging issues, you have to have that bigger view. So it does seem to be resonating quite strongly, certainly in the conversations I've had for the last year or two.
Sure. So you've been leading the synthetic biology function within the business for a few years now. What are some of your greatest hits? What have you been up to these last few years?
We've done some really quite interesting stuff in the last few years. So some highlights have been, for example, the work we've done with catalog technologies, and that was around storing digital data into DNA. So actually taking the digital ones and noughts and putting them into the polymer, the DNA, for long-term storage. That's been a very challenging but great project and some real great outcomes. You know, we're writing data at megabits a second type rates with that technology. Another good one would be bioplastics. So we are now in our labs here at CC, we're growing plastic. So we have organisms that we have designed to make the plastic, and they're now doing that in our fermenters. We had the first batch finish yesterday, I think it was, and everyone was very pleased because something has grown. So we've got a little bit more work to do.
What's grown? You're worried?
Yeah,
tell me.
No, well, it should be plastic. We did it at a smaller scale and got some really nice results, but yesterday was our first attempt at a bigger scale. So a lot of excitement in the lab yesterday to sort of start analysing and what have we actually made here.
Oh wow, so that's as current as yesterday.
That's as current as yesterday.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, well we look forward to learning more on that one. So we're here at Innovation Day. You gave a seminar a bit earlier, and there was a great phrase that I took from that, which is biology is technology.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Right, yeah, so biology is technology is really, it's a mindset ultimately. So for a long time, biology has been a research discipline. You know, it's about categorizing and researching and just trying to understand. If you take a slightly different view though and say, no, biology is predictable and it is programmable, you can start to think of it like other technology disciplines. So we can control it, we can predict it, we can design with it, we can execute, function with it. So if you start to view biology in that way, it opens up lots of interesting avenues for application. So you might say we have a biological system and a mechanical system. Well, how do we find the best compromise between them? How do we actually try and make the biology do something different, which overall leads to a better outcome? So at a first level, it's a mindset really. It's almost not quite philosophical, but you take the view, I want to use biology like other technologies. And the reality is that the current tools, the science that's gone for the last 30, 40, 50 years probably, has now given us the tool set that you really can start to do that. So One example is the CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing system, for example. That came out a few years ago. It's a great tool which allows you to much more directly reprogram. And that's a great example. Okay, I now have some level of control and predictability, therefore I can start to think of it as a technology that I can use and develop, rather than it's just something separate, it's a research project, I'm just going to learn about it. So that's what we're meaning by that phrase, biology is technology.
Sure. So that's interesting. It makes me wonder then. You enter into that mindset. What happens now? Where should we be looking for the next exciting breakthrough? What should I be paying attention to?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. There's a huge amount of work going on in cell and gene therapies. The ability to use these tools to make changes to a person's DNA and allow you to start attacking particularly cancer and immune system type diseases. There's just in the last couple of years, those first therapies are really coming out through the regulatory process to market. So over the next 5 years, there'll be many, many more of that type of therapy coming out.
In the UK, the UK's National Health Service, there was the first gene therapy on a live patient, was there?
That's right.
This year.
That's right.
So that we've made some progress. Where's it going from there? What are the next steps?
Yeah. So I think the current crop of therapies, quite rightly, are starting with the relatively easier targets. So, for example, the CAR-T, the chimeric antigen receptor T cells, are all today focused around blood-borne cancers, leukemias and stuff like that, because it's mobile, it's moving around your body, and so the ability of cells to interact and for the modified cells to attack the disease is relatively straightforward. I mean, relatively, it's still an amazing thing, but it's more accessible. The real challenge, of course, is going into solid tumour. All the other types of cancers where it isn't mobile, it's actually somewhere within the body. So a huge amount of research going on into that area, and I think a good example of the kind of idea where people will be rationally developing these therapies targeted towards very specific cancers in various parts of the body, to try and truly attack the fundamental mechanisms of what's causing that disease. So that would be one example. I guess another one that we're certainly keeping a very close eye on is around recycling of plastic waste. So another really interesting, 2016 I think it was, some Japanese researchers discovered this organism that was eating plastic bottles. It had evolved in a waste site somewhere, and it had started to degrade the plastic. A few years later, that is now starting to become a very real thing, that you can take the organism, the enzymes it produces, and start to use that to degrade the plastic. But more excitingly than that, it actually degrades it back into the constituent monomers. So effectively, you take it back to where it started, and you truly can recycle it in your production process. So I think that's another big area to watch, that use of biology for materials management, waste management, true recycling back to where you came from.
So an enzyme that can digest plastics. Well, that sounds like a miraculous fix for one of the biggest problems the world faces. Presumably it's not quite as simple as that.
Not quite as simple as that, but it's a great example, and maybe this comes back to the whole bioinnovation theme. It's a great example of a technical solution that looks really promising. Maybe we have a way of very cheaply and efficiently reusing this enormous amount of plastic. That's fantastic. But then you have to ask the questions about, well, what are the governance mechanisms around that? And what are the economics around that? Who's paying for that? Who are the winners and the losers? How does that fit in terms of the stakeholders? And how as a society are we wanting to do that? What level of risk versus reward are we willing to accept, globally? And it's maybe a good example of where you can take a biologically produced thing and ask those much bigger questions about how does that impact a society, and how would that work at a country, national, international level to truly make that real. And people are every day just reusing that material because it's accessible, it's cheap, it works really well, and everyone accepts it as a good technology.
Right. Sounds like a challenge.
We're working on it.
All right. Richard, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.